The sun was a merciless furnace over Kandahar, baking the earth into cracked clay and turning the air into a shimmering haze. Inside the cramped, sand-colored tent that served as the operations hub for the 82nd Airborne Division, Sergeant First Class Ethan Caldwell, 40, hunched over a battered laptop. The hum of generators and the distant crackle of radio chatter filled the space, but Ethan's world had just gone silent. His inbox glowed with a single, new email, its subject line slicing through him like a bayonet: divorce papers, final notice. Ethan's jaw tightened. He clicked the email, his calloused fingers hesitating over the mouse. The words blurred at first, but their meaning hit like a frag grenade. His wife of 12 years, Sarah, had filed for divorce. The papers were attached, cold and clinical, stamped by a court in Fayetteville, North Carolina. But it wasn't just the legal jargon that gutted him. A forwarded message from Sarah's lawyer laid it bare. She'd moved out of their Fort Bragg home, taken their dog, and drained their joint bank account to the tune of $27,000, 0 cents. Oh, and there was a new guy, some slick civilian named Travis, already sleeping in Ethan's bed. He leaned back in the folding chair, the metal creaking under his weight. His dog tags clinked against his chest, a faint reminder of who he was supposed to be: a soldier, a leader, a man who didn't flinch under fire. But this was a different kind of war, and he hadn't seen the ambush coming. 6 months earlier, Ethan had sensed the fault lines forming. Back at Fort Bragg, Sarah had started to drift. She was 38, a paralegal with a sharp mind and a laugh that used to light up their small ranch-style home. But lately that laugh was rare, replaced by distracted glances at her phone and vague excuses about working late. She'd stopped asking about his deployments, stopped waiting up when he dragged himself home from training exercises. Once he'd found a receipt for a bar in Raleigh, paid $85, 0 cents for cocktails on a night she'd claimed to be at a client meeting. He didn't confront her. Ethan wasn't the type to beg for answers. Instead, he started preparing for the worst. He opened a separate bank account at a credit union off-post, funneling half his paycheck into it. Important documents, his birth certificate, their marriage license, the title to his old Chevy Silverado, went into a lockbox he stashed in his buddy Mike's garage. Mike, a fellow paratrooper, didn't ask questions. "Just tell me you're not going AWOL, man," he'd joked. Ethan had forced a grin. Not yet. Now, sitting in the sweltering tent, Ethan realized his instincts had been dead on. Sarah hadn't just left him, she'd erased him. The email mentioned she'd already moved into a condo in Raleigh with Travis, a consultant she'd met at some networking event. Ethan pictured the guy probably wore skinny jeans and a man bun, the kind of dude who'd never held a rifle or jumped out of a C-130 at 1T1 feet. The thought didn't make him feel better. He closed the laptop and stepped outside, the Afghan sun hitting him like a slap. The base was a maze of HESCO barriers and dusty Humvees, alive with the clatter of boots and the roar of a Blackhawk lifting off. Ethan lit a cigarette, a habit he'd picked up again on this tour, and stared at the horizon. Kandahar was a world away from Fayetteville's pine forests and strip malls, but the betrayal felt closer, sharper, like shrapnel lodged under his skin. His platoon was gearing up for a night patrol in Zari district, a Taliban hotspot where IEDs were as common as scorpions. Ethan was supposed to brief them in 20 minutes, but his mind was stuck on Sarah. How long had she been planning this? Had she waited for him to deploy, knowing he'd be too far away to fight back? And the money? $27,000, 0 cents. That was their savings, scraped together over years of deployments and overtime, meant for a down payment on a bigger house, maybe even a kid someday. Gone. Just like her. A voice snapped him back. "Sarge, you good?" It was Specialist Rivera, 24, a wiry kid from San Antonio with a knack for spotting trouble, on the battlefield and off. Rivera's eyes flicked to the cigarette, then to Ethan's face. "You look like you just got bad news from the V." Ethan exhaled a plume of smoke. "Worse." He didn't elaborate. Rivera didn't push. That was the unspoken code out here. You carried your own weight, even when it was crushing you. Back in the tent, Ethan pulled up his bank's website. His separate account still had $9,400.00. Safe, untouched. It wasn't much, but it was something, a lifeline. He opened another email, this one from his sister Lauren back in Ohio. She'd been checking on the house while he was gone. Her message was short but loaded. Sarah's gone. Place is empty except for some furniture. Neighbor saw a guy helping her move. You okay? Call me. Ethan didn't call. Not yet. He had a patrol to lead, a dozen paratroopers counting on him to keep them alive in a valley where death hid under every rock. But as he strapped on his plate carrier and checked his M4, a plan started forming. Sarah thought she'd blindsided him, but Ethan wasn't out of the fight. He'd get through this tour, get home, and take back what was his, starting with his pride. The desert stretched out before him, vast and unforgiving. Ethan crushed his cigarette under his boot and headed for the briefing tent. The war in Kandahar was one thing. The war waiting back home, that was going to be a hell of a lot messier. Zari District Patrol was a blur of adrenaline and dust, Ethan Caldwell's M4 steady in his hands, as he led his platoon through moonlit fields laced with danger. Every step could trigger an IED, every shadow could hide a sniper. But Ethan's mind wasn't just on the Taliban. It was on Sarah, Travis, and the $27,000.00 she'd stolen from their life. The divorce papers burned in his memory, each word a fresh wound. By the time he returned to base at 300, his body ached, but his resolve was iron. Sarah thought she'd broken him. She was wrong. Back in his tent, Ethan powered up the laptop, the glow casting harsh shadows across his weathered face. The email from his sister Lauren still sat unanswered, but a new message from his bank flagged urgent activity on their joint mortgage. His gut twisted. He logged into the mortgage portal, hands shaking, not from fear, but from a rage he hadn't felt since his first firefight. The screen confirmed his worst suspicions. The house, their 3-bedroom ranch in Fayetteville, had been refinanced for $330,000.00 6 weeks ago. The signature on the documents? His. Except Ethan hadn't signed a damn thing. Sarah had forged his name. He stared at the screen, the betrayal sinking deeper. This wasn't just about her leaving or shacking up with Travis. She'd weaponized their home, their shared dream, turning it into a cash grab while he was 7,000 miles away dodging bullets. Ethan pulled up the bank's transaction history. Most of the $330.00 had been wired out, $200.00 to an account he didn't recognize, and $50.00 to a real estate broker named Daniel Spencer. The name hit like a tracer round. Spencer. Lauren's email had mentioned a guy helping Sarah move. Was this him, or was Travis just the tip of a bigger scam? Ethan's fingers flew across the keyboard, forwarding the mortgage details to Lauren with a single line. Check if Daniel Spencer's been at the house. Don't tell anyone. Then he opened a secure chat with Captain Greg Walsh, a JAG lawyer at Fort Bragg he'd known since jump school. Greg was stateside, and Ethan trusted him to dig without tipping anyone off. Sarah forged my signature on a $330.00 K refinance, Ethan typed. Need you to look into a Daniel Spencer, real estate guy. Something's off. Greg's reply came fast. Jesus, Ethan. I'm on it. Stay sharp out there. Ethan closed the laptop and leaned back, the tense canvas walls closing in. The air smelled of sweat and diesel, but all he could feel was the weight of Sarah's betrayal. She hadn't just left him. She'd sold him out. A few days later, Ethan got a call on the sat phone, a rare break from the chaos of Kandahar. It was Lauren, her voice tight with worry. Ethan, I checked the house like you asked. Neighbor says a guy in a suit's been coming by, taking photos of the property. Said his name was Spencer. I pulled some records. Daniel Spencer's a broker, but he's got a rap sheet. Shady deals, mostly targeting military families. And Ethan, the house is listed for sale. I found it online. Ethan's blood ran cold. Listed for sale, his home, the one he'd painted with Sarah, where they'd hosted barbecues for his platoon, where he'd planned to grow old, was being dangled like bait behind his back. "Did you see Sarah?" he asked. "No, but the neighbor said she's barely there. It's mostly this Spencer guy and some dude with tattoos." "Sounds like Travis." Lauren paused. "Ethan, what the hell's going on?" "I don't know yet," he lied, "but I'm handling it." He wasn't handling it, not yet, but he was done being a victim. Ethan reached out to Greg again, this time looping in a contact from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, Agent Maria Torres. Torres was a bulldog, known for dismantling scams targeting veterans. Ethan sent her everything: the forged mortgage, the wire transfers, Spencer's name. "I need to know if this is bigger than Sarah," he wrote, "and I need it fast." Torres called him within 48 hours. Her voice clipped but urgent. "Caldwell, you've stumbled into a hornet's nest. Daniel Spencer's on our radar. Multiple complaints about him fleecing military families. Fake refinances, forged deeds, you name it. Your wife's boyfriend, Travis, he's Spencer's muscle. Runs interference and scares off anyone who asks questions. We've got reason to believe they're targeting deployed soldiers, hitting them when they're overseas and can't fight back. Your case isn't isolated." Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. "How many others?" "At least 6 families in the last year, all Fort Bragg. We're building a case, but we need hard evidence. Can you get us access to your house?" Ethan didn't hesitate. He'd installed a security system before deploying. Cameras linked to an app on his phone, motion activated, hidden in the smoke detectors. Sarah didn't know about them. He'd never told her. "I'll send you the feed," he said. "Anything else?" "Stay calm," Torres warned. "If they know you're onto them, they'll bolt." Calm wasn't an option. That night, Ethan logged into the security app. The footage loaded, grainy but clear. There was Spencer, all slick hair and cheap cologne, pacing the living room with a tablet, snapping photos. Travis lounged on Ethan's couch, a beer in hand, smirking as Spencer talked. Ethan turned up the audio, his heart pounding. "We close this by next month," Spencer said, his voice tinny through the feed. "Buyer's ready. Cash deal. Sarah gets her cut, you get yours. Caldwell won't know until it's done." Travis laughed. "He's out there eating sand. By the time he's back, we'll be in Miami." Ethan's vision blurred with rage, but he forced himself to breathe. He recorded the clip, sent it to Torres, and waited. The next day, she called back. "That's gold, Caldwell. We've got enough for a warrant. Spencer and Travis are linked to a dozen scams. Same MO, targeting soldiers' homes. Your wife's in deep, but she might just be a pawn. We'll know more when we move." Ethan hung up, his chest tight. Sarah, a pawn? He didn't buy it. She'd forged his name, drained their savings, and let these vultures into their home. But the thought of her being manipulated sparked a flicker of doubt. He remembered her laugh, the way she'd curl up next to him during thunderstorms. Was that woman gone for good, or was she caught in something bigger? The patrol schedule didn't let him dwell. Kandahar was heating up, with Taliban ambushes hitting closer to base. Ethan threw himself into his missions, but every quiet moment brought him back to the footage. Travis's smirk, Spencer's cold calculations. His home was slipping away, and with it, the life he'd fought for. He thought of the other families Torres mentioned, soldiers like him, betrayed while serving. The injustice burned, but so did his determination. On his next call with Torres, she dropped a bombshell. "We raided Spencer's office, found documents tying him to a network, real estate scams, money laundering, all aimed at military families. Your case broke it open, Ethan, but Sarah, she's in the wind. Left the condo, no trace. We think she's with Travis." Ethan's throat tightened. Sarah, gone. Part of him wanted to find her, to demand answers. Another part wanted to let her drown in the mess she'd made. But this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about justice. For him, for the other families, for every soldier who'd been stabbed in the back while fighting for their country. As he geared up for another patrol, Ethan made a vow. He'd survive this tour, get home, and face whatever was left of his life. Spencer and Travis would pay. Sarah would answer. And he'd rebuild, brick by brick, even if it broke him. The desert stretched out. endless and cruel. But Ethan Caldwell was still standing. For now, that was enough. The Kandahar sky was a bruise of purples and reds as Ethan Caldwell cleaned his M4, the rhythmic clack of metal grounding him amidst the chaos. His tour was winding down, but the war back home raged on. The security footage of Daniel Spencer and Travis plotting to sell his house played on a loop in his mind, each frame fueling a fire that no desert heat could match. Agent Maria Torres' last call had lit a fuse. The FBI was closing in, and Ethan's evidence, those hidden cameras he'd installed before deploying, had cracked the case wide open. But Sarah's disappearance gnawed at him. Was she a victim or a viper? The answer was coming, whether he was ready or not. Back at Fort Bragg, the FBI moved like lightning. Torres's team raided Spencer's Raleigh office at dawn, catching him mid-meeting with a briefcase full of forged deeds. Travis was nabbed at the condo, his cocky smirk gone as agents cuffed him on charges of conspiracy, wire fraud, and identity theft. The bust was a surgical strike, built on Ethan's footage and months of financial records tying the duo to a predatory ring targeting military families. 6 other soldiers' homes had been hit, their savings and properties siphoned off while they were deployed. Ethan's case was the key that unlocked it all. He got the call from Torres on a staticky sat phone, the connection cutting in and out as a sandstorm howled outside his tent. "Caldwell, we got him," she said, her voice sharp with triumph. "Spencer's looking at 12 years, minimum. Travis got 8. They're done. But Sarah, she turned herself in. She's cutting a deal." Ethan's heart stuttered. "What kind of deal?" "She's dodging criminal charges. But it's steep. She's paying back every cent of the $330,000 0 cents refinance. Most of it's already seized from Spencer's accounts. She's also signing over the house, relinquishing any claim to your military pension, and admitting to the forgery in writing. It's a full confession. You're clear, Ethan. The house is yours, and your finances are secure." He should have felt relief, but the weight in his chest only grew heavier. Sarah's confession was a legal win, but it was also a final nail in the coffin of their marriage. 12 years, barbecues in the backyard, quiet nights watching storms roll in, promises whispered in the dark, reduced to a signature on a plea deal. He thanked Torres, hung up, and stared at the tent's canvas ceiling, the storm's roar mirroring the turmoil inside him. 2 weeks later, Ethan's boots hit U.S. soil at Pope Army Airfield. The North Carolina air was thick with late summer humidity, a stark contrast to Kandahar's dry bite. His platoon was greeted by families, wives with tear-streaked faces, kids waving handmade signs. But no one waited for Ethan. Lauren was there, though, her pickup idling in the lot. She hugged him tight, her voice breaking. "You're home, big brother. Let's get you settled." The drive to Fayetteville was quiet, the radio humming low with country tunes. Ethan's house came into view, its familiar red brick and white shutters a punch to the gut. The for sale sign was gone, but the ghosts of Sarah's betrayal lingered. Inside, the place felt hollow. Half the furniture was missing, the walls bare where their photos once hung. Lauren had cleaned up, but the emptiness was a wound no mop could heal. Ethan's first stop was Greg Walsh's office. The JAG lawyer slid a stack of papers across the desk. Sarah's signed confession, the deed to the house, and a court order restoring Ethan's financial accounts. "You're whole again, legally," Greg said. "But I know this doesn't fix the rest." Ethan nodded, his throat tight. "Did she say anything? About why?" Greg hesitated. "Her statement's in there. Says she got in over her head with Travis. Thought the money would set her free. Spencer fed her lies about you never finding out she's broken, Ethan. Not an excuse, but she's not the woman you married." That night, Ethan read Sarah's confession alone in the living room, a single lamp casting long shadows. Her words were clinical, detached. "I forged Ethan Caldwell's signature, acted under pressure from Daniel Spencer, believed I had no choice. No apology, no remorse. Just a woman he didn't recognize. Unraveling the life they'd built." He crumpled the paper, his eyes burning. and poured a shot of bourbon. The first tears came then, not for Sarah, but for the man he'd been, trusting, hopeful, blind. The next morning, Ethan met Torres at a Raleigh coffee shop. She slid a folder across the table, her eyes steady. "You didn't just save your house, Caldwell. Your evidence took down a network. 7 families are getting restitution because of you. Spencer's crew hit soldiers from Bragg to Pendleton. They're done, and you're the reason why." Ethan flipped through the folder. Indictments, victim statements, photos of other soldiers' homes. One name caught his eye. Sergeant First Class Jamal Carter, 82nd Airborne, whose wife and kids lost everything while he was in Iraq. Ethan's chest tightened. He hadn't known Carter well, but the man's face at a brigade briefing flashed in his mind, proud and steady. Now, Carter was rebuilding, just like Ethan. "You ever think about doing this full-time?" Torres asked, half smiling. "You've got a knack for catching bastards." Ethan managed a wry grin. "I'll stick to jumping out of planes." Weeks passed, and Ethan threw himself into routine. He repainted the house, mowed the lawn, even adopted a rescue dog, a scrappy mutt he named Bravo. The 82nd kept him busy, but the quiet moments stung. Friends urged him to date, to move on, but Ethan wasn't ready. Sarah's betrayal had taught him something sharper than pain: vigilance. He'd trusted too easily, loved too blindly. That wouldn't happen again. One evening, he got a letter forwarded from Greg's office. It was from Sarah, handwritten, postmarked from some nowhere town in Ohio. "Ethan, I know you hate me. I don't blame you. I was weak, and I broke us. I'm starting over, trying to be better. You deserve the truth. I stopped loving you long before Travis. I'm sorry." He read it twice, then burned it in the backyard, the flames licking the dusk. Her words didn't heal, they just closed a door. The case made local news. Hawkins called it a wake-up call. Ethan didn't watch, but Lauren did, texting him a clip of Spencer and Travis in cuffs, their scam laid bare. Ethan's name wasn't mentioned, but the story hit home for every soldier at Bragg. At a platoon barbecue, Specialist Rivera raised a beer. "To Sarge, kickin' ass here and stateside." The cheers were loud, but Ethan's smile was tight. Justice was his, but victory felt hollow. As fall settled over Fayetteville, Ethan stood on his porch, Bravo at his feet, watching the pines sway. The house was his, the bank account was flush, and the law had spoken, but the scars remained. Trust shattered, dreams torched. He'd won the war, but the cost was a piece of his soul. Ethan sipped his coffee, the horizon glowing gold. He'd rebuild, not for Sarah, not for the past, but for the man he was becoming, wiser, harder, unbroken.